wall was made of concrete, probably 4 to 5 meters high.
Going from West Berlin to East Berlin was like going through a time warp.
Because one side of the street was vibrant, full of colors and noises. On the other side, the light was, a very different light. It was this orangey, reddish light. No cars on the street, very little lighting in the houses, and a little bit somber, a little bit scary, I would say, because there was no life.
It's a symbol of their country being divided.
From the West, you wouldn't see that as protection, right? Because walls can have multiple meanings, philosophically speaking, right? It can narrow something that doesn't want to get narrow, but it can also protect.
The Berlin Wall. Built in the dead of night, August of 1961, it had only one goal: to prevent East Berliners from escaping to freedom. By erecting the Berlin Wall, the communist-controlled East German government trampled upon numerous basic human rights. The unintended result, however, was the kindling of the human spirit in both East and West Germans, inspiring thousands of Easterners to battle the odds in a perilous attempt to escape the cruel lives they led, meanwhile igniting a sense of responsibility in West Germans to aid their Eastern brethren. After World War II, Berlin was completely disarmed and broken into 4 zones of occupation: American, Soviet, British, and French. The American, British, and French zones of Berlin became known as West Berlin, while the Soviet zone was known as East Berlin. In the years following the division of Germany, all industries in East Berlin were closed, and all valuable industry materials, even the railroad tracks, were shipped to Russia. The people were severely abused by the Red Army, a Soviet military force, right after the divide took place. There was additionally a shortage of food staples, and all-around low living standards. The Stasi, or secret police, monitored the public, infringing upon the privacy of thousands. In short, East Berlin was an environment of hardship and fear. With this fear came the motivation to escape. In the year 1950, around 3 million fled to West Germany. Almost all were young, skilled workers. As the conditions in East Germany persisted over the years, so did the urgency to leave it. In 1961, Nikita Khrushchev, the first secretary of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, met with American President John F. Kennedy in Vienna, Austria. A major topic of discussion was the legitimacy of the East German regime. To Khrushchev's indignation, Kennedy refused to accept an unjust government and took upon himself the responsibility of defending the rights of thousands of East Berliners. In a misguided sense of responsibility, Khrushchev gave permission for the construction of a wall, partly out of fear of the brain drain and its impact on the economy, and partly out of agitation from his recent encounter with Kennedy. The intended purpose of the wall was to keep the East Germans trapped in Berlin, and to shield East Germany from the influence of Western ideas and cultures.
On the night of August 13, 1961, at 2:30 a.m., barbed wire was strung along the border. By morning, the border between East and West was completely closed. Suddenly, families and friends who had been in separate sectors of Berlin the night before found themselves split apart. Escape attempts erupted as friends and family members in the West encouraged their loved ones. People tried to escape in vain as they realized that they may never see each other again. Commuter trains from the east to the west halted. The right of movement was stripped away, and families, friends, and neighbors were torn apart. In one case, parents trapped in East Berlin with children in West Berlin's West End Hospital were unable to find out if the children had survived. Border guards were ordered to shoot any and all escapees. More than 125 people died in an attempt to regain their freedom. The West was helpless as the Berlin Wall was built on the eastern side. The barrier gradually became a 12-foot-high concrete wall that stretched for 96 miles. It divided neighborhoods, streets, and houses. Fortifications included a back wall, a minefield, a jeep road, guard dogs, watchtowers, and searchlights.
We really didn't have a free will, free expression. There was a controlled state.
The right to privacy was one of the most significant basic human rights violated while the Berlin Wall was standing. The Stasi, or secret police, were responsible for the constant violation of privacy rights. The Stasi were truly frightening, as they were everywhere, always watching. Anyone could be a member of the notorious secret police force, in the guise of family, friend, or acquaintance. About 1/3 of all East Germans were terrorized by the Stasi throughout their existence. They often employed the tactics of arrest and torture.
But as an East German or an East Berliner, to know that every little thing you did was being watched and recorded, possibly, I mean, who could live like that?
Perhaps even more significant, and doubtlessly more devastating, was the violation of the right to travel. People's lives were torn apart as they were separated from their loved ones for an indefinite amount of time. The yearning to be reunited with loved ones, paired with the desire to regain the freedom that had so abruptly been stolen from them, made the citizens of East Germany desperate to escape the harsh lives they led. They were encouraged by the continued dedication of John F. Kennedy, who visited West Germany in June of 1963 to deliver the speech Ich bin ein Berliner, which translates to I am a Berliner.
In 18 years of peace and good faith, this generation of Germans has earned the right to be free, including the right to unite their families and their nation in lasting peace with goodwill to all people.
It's a remarkable speech, a strong commitment to Berlin as a city and its people.
Escape was near impossible. The land by the wall was covered with raked gravel or turned earth, making it easy to track would-be escapees. The land was mined and booby-trapped. Border guards patrolled the wall, accompanied by attack dogs. 7 groups of guards, ranging from 1,000 to 1,200 soldiers, kept watch from the 303 watchtowers. Their orders were to shoot to kill on sight. Gunter Litwin was the first to be shot to death while attempting escape. Udo Dullik drowned after being shot while trying to swim across the Spree River. Bernd Lunzer was shot trying to escape on a clothesline strung over a wall. Winfried Friedenberg built a hot air balloon to escape to the west. It crashed and he died. Peter Fechter was only 18 when he was killed. He decided to escape with a friend in 1962 to be with his sister. They ran across a border of sand and scaled the wall, but Peter hesitated and was shot. He fell and was heard crying for help. His friend made it to the west, while Peter was left bleeding on the ground. Checkpoint Charlie, a crossing point between East and West Berlin, was only 1,000 feet away. Even though people on the west asked American soldiers to rescue Peter, they were ordered not to intervene because he was in Soviet-controlled territory. 50 minutes later, East Berlin guards took his body away.
They were willing to risk everything. And to me, that just speaks volumes about the human spirit and the courage of the East Berliners.
However, miraculous successful escapes did occur. The first few weeks after the wall was built, people jumped from windows of buildings right near the wall and into the crowd. A woman tried to jump out of a window and into a blanket held by West Berlin firefighters, but she was restrained by East German police. She broke free and was caught safely. On December 5th, Harry Detterling drove a train into the wall. 32 were on board, and 24 made the escape alive. Detterling called this ride the last train to freedom. Several trucks also managed to crash through the border. In one case, while a man was sliding from a first-floor window, guards seized him from the room he had just escaped. Westerners below caught the man's ankle, which resulted in a tug-of-war. The man safely made it to the west with the help of gravity.
There was a guy who was actually getting over with balloon. I know of a situation where people, dug a hole under the wall. I know of folks who were hiding in a certain section in the car to come across.
Although a few East Germans successfully escaped without the aid of the West, in many instances, Western citizens were instrumental in the liberation of Eastern civilians. The West Germans took the responsibility of bringing others to freedom by forming crowds or holding blankets for escapees to jump into, and even by shouting words of encouragement. In a sense, the West gave the Eastern escapees their wings to fly to freedom. President Ronald Reagan also took the responsibility of liberating East Germans into his own hands. When he visited West Germany in 1987, he directly appealed to their General Secretary of the CPSU, Mikhail Gorbachev.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
It was ultimately the human spirit which toppled the Berlin Wall, and with it, the Soviet regime in East Germany. Throughout their rule, the Communists used fear as a tactic to maintain control. Eastern citizens courageously combated communist authority by taking part in massive public demonstrations beginning in 1989. Over 1,000 people were arrested, but the human spirit prevailed, and others continued to speak out. The communists were no longer able to control the people of East Germany, and on November 9, 1989, the gates to freedom were opened. Friends and family rejoiced, reunited after 28 years of separation.
I remember that moment when it was in the news. It was very emotional. Everyone was in tears.
Taking out their past frustrations on the wretched, hated wall, the people of West and East Berlin together physically destroyed it. Attacking it with chisels, hammers, and whatever they could find, the people of two different worlds were united once again. The fall of the Berlin Wall was a major factor in the eventual end of the Soviet Union. Territories throughout the USSR were inspired by East Germany's actions and followed its people's example by taking to the streets. The struggle to overcome the wall not only gave Berliners the courage and strength to fight for their rights, but it also paved the way for others to retake liberty in their flight to freedom.